Today's conversation is about why it might be a good time now to um, for machines to replace certain jobs. And the US is currently experiencing a labor crisis as well as inflation. So we will explore how technology can help to address these and how we might effectively reskill employees for the future of work. And to do this, I am joined today by Infosys President Ravi Kumar. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you for that opportunity to talk to you and your audiences.
I'm really looking forward to this. So maybe we can start off by you giving us a little bit of your own background and how you ended up the president of Infosys.
Thank you, Bernard. I grew up in India, went to an engineering school. Then I worked for a couple of years before I went and did my MBA. My first job was a nuclear scientist at the Baba Atomic Research Center in India. So I started as a nuclear scientist, and then after I finished my MBA, I went to management consulting, worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers. Then I actually worked for sales in Oracle Corporation, and then I did CRM consulting in Cambridge Technology Partners in the US. And then I landed in Infosys, and I did a variety of roles, starting all the way from running horizontal businesses to vertical businesses to now being the president of the company. So I've kind of gone through the full chain, and I've always done jobs which were very different to the jobs in the past. So I had a very diverse experience, and that kind of helped me to build a cognitive diversity, if I may, in my job.
Fantastic. So maybe you can also give us a bit of an overview of Infosys and what the organization does and your responsibility today.
Yeah, so Infosys is a global tech and digital services companies partners with large enterprises on their transformational journeys. These days, most transformational journeys are digital in nature. So a lot of what we do is very digital.
Mhm.
We started way back um, when the Y2K boom really happened, and that was the first wave of technology outsourcing. Then we transitioned to a wave where enterprises went global. As enterprises went global, they scaled using technology, and we were one of those companies which did that heavy lifting, and we pioneered the whole model of global delivery or offshoring, as you call it then. Thereafter, we helped customers, large enterprises, go through the journey of digitization, which is primarily building digital channels so that you could access your consumers in a better way. And then we got into the process of actually helping our customers embrace the cloud journey, which was the foundation on which digital journeys were prepared. And in the times we're all living in, where every company is a software company, every industry is a tech industry, we are embedding technology software into core products and core services of enterprises. It's a very interesting era. Digitization has got accelerated. The business models are getting dispersed
Hmm.
because we are living in a physical plus virtual world, and software is the new alchemy of business. And in this era, technology is no longer non-core. It's actually core for every industry. I wouldn't overstate by saying that every industry is a tech industry now. And I think companies like Infosys have this amazing opportunity to help enterprises transform their core, digitize their core as they go through these journeys. So that's the endeavor we are in. We have 290 plus thousand employees across the globe, and we have distributed talent pools. In fact, we extensively, while we started all the way by building capabilities back in India, now we are building capabilities in the US and European markets and Australia. We take feeders from schools and colleges and build tech and digital talent, which is going to help us partner with our clients.
Very good. And what's your job today? What are your main responsibility as the
So,
president?
so Bernard, I manage all global services across the world. I'm responsible for all the global services, all the way from business process, technology, cloud and digital, and consulting services. So it's the full gamut.
Very good. So in the beginning, I was saying that we're facing some inflation at the moment. There are a number of countries experiencing inflation. I guess many of this driven by the fact that we need to get rid of some of the debt we have accumulated during COVID. So, is there a role for technology, not in, a role for technology in curbing inflation?
Indeed, absolutely, absolutely. Digital technologies is a deflationary force in a inflationary economy. There are three reasons why you find inflation all over the world. The US is at an inflation of 7+%. Most Asian countries are on an inflation. Europe has an all-time high on inflation. Latin America, some countries have 40 to 50+% inflation. And there were broadly three reasons. There are supply chain disruptions. The world went global and interconnected and interdependent over the last few decades. Supply chains have actually gone very global, and those global supply chains have ended up with disruptions because of the health crisis. So supply chain disruptions, cost of essential goods has gone up, and of course wage inflation. Wage inflation is probably one of the biggest reasons why the inflation across the world is very high. So digital technologies can be that deflationary force because you could increase productivity by increasing reach on digital channels and micro modularizing transactions. You could make the transactions micro modular, you could lower the cost of transactions, and more importantly, you could get an extended reach through digital channels. Physical channels cost you more, digital channels cost you less, and they're very expansive. You could reach out to a large set of your constituents or your consumers, and using digital technologies, you could really lower the cost of transactions. Labor shortages, which we just spoke about, wage inflation related, has been a big reason for inflation. In fact, just in the United States, we have 10.5 million open positions, and there are only 8 million people available for jobs. We've never had this unprecedented crisis of sorts, or the gap between available number of people and jobs. What has digital technologies done, or AI software done? It's kind of created jobs of the future and taken away jobs of the past. So these labor shortages can actually be bridged using digital technologies. What you can really do is automate repetitive tasks, automate low potential jobs, and move people to high potential jobs, high productive jobs. And therefore, you could really bridge that gap, because if machines take over some of those jobs, what I mean by machines is AI software and new age digital technologies. If they can take over low productive, low potential jobs, you could actually move humans to high productive, high potential jobs. And that's a big lever the world has to press on. So I would say the embrace of digital technologies in enterprises across the world can actually make the transition, and therefore create a create kind of reduce the gap in the number of jobs available to number of people available, and more importantly, move people to high productive jobs. We spoke about supply chains and supply chain disruptions. Supply chains have been built mostly for just in time. I call it just in time supply chains, agile, very little buffer. With the disruptions happening, you're stretching the boundaries of everything, every industry, everything we do, which means supply chains have to go from just in time to just in case. You have to almost build supply chains in a just-in-case model. And as you build supply chains in just-in-case model, you create efficient buffers leveraging digital technologies, and therefore decongest the supply chain bottlenecks and create a balance between resilience and agility using digital technologies. So overall, it can reduce labor shortages. It can reduce the cost of transactions, create increased reach, extended reach to your consumers, and it could decongest supply chains. The last one piece I would like to add: digital technologies traditionally were applied to the fast-moving industries like financial services, telecom, retail. Modernizing untraditional industries like shipping, logistics, ports using digital technologies can also reduce the labor shortage. In fact, I'm sure you've heard this, the great resignation era, which is happening today, is happening in some of these untraditional industries. Some of the older ones, like shipping, back in the US, the labor shortages in shipping is actually creating supply chain congestion. If we can automate some of those tasks, reduce the labor dependence, I think digital technologies are going to play a big role in kind of shrinking that labor shortage and therefore reducing the inflationary pressure on the economy.
Very good. And this is something I've said for a very long time, that I see this very optimistically, that there's a real opportunity to give humans better jobs, more human jobs, and outsource the things to machines that machines can do better and more effectively. Do you have any specific examples that illustrate of what sort of jobs might be good to automate right now, and how you then move people into higher value jobs as you refer to them?
Oh yeah, quite a few, a lot of them. In fact, if you take the manufacturing industry, a lot of repetitive tasks in the manufacturing industry can be automated with robotics and autonomous technologies. However, the key is taking that labor and workforce, reskilling them for high value jobs or high potential jobs. Um, you know, I actually know about a customer of ours who actually took 3,000 of their customer service agents from a physical customer contact center and moved them remote. And as they moved them remote during the pandemic, they created digital platforms underneath it so that they could access customer customer related information and do the job more effectively and have more decision support needed. So which essentially means as calls were coming in for customer service, a lot of the repetitive tasks were done by the machines, while the humans were actually empowered to take decision support for their consumers. And as they did this, they modularized that work. They made the work more gig. They made the work more micro, and they actually disconnected them from physical places. So it kind of increased productivity in a big way. So there are quite a few examples all over in every industry where machines can take the repetitive tasks and humans can take the high potential jobs. In fact, Bernard, one of the things, this is my hypothesis, um, work in the current physical workplaces has actually, the template has actually been built from the industrial revolution. In the industrial revolution, we actually moved from an agrarian society to industrial jobs, and industrial jobs had a factory like model where you break a work packet into tasks, into jobs, and you run them repetitively on a rhythm. And therefore most workplaces had problem solvers. And I think a part of that problem solving will actually move to machines, and humans will start to look for finding new problems or the endeavor of finding more purposeful problems so that machines and humans can work together in solving them. So the workplaces are going to become humans plus machines. And in fact, if I stretch it further, it will become humans plus machines plus or full-time work plus machines plus gig work, because part-time work, because of the advent of digital technologies, will become real in workplaces.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And how confident are you that we will be able to reskill employees? Because I can very much see the example of call center workers doing more value adding, more human problem solving work, and passing some of the more repetitive work to the machines. And if I look across the entire economy, we have taxi drivers that are threatened by autonomous driving cars in the future. We have supermarket checkout people that will be automated in the future. So how confident are you that we can actually reskill our existing workforce, and do you have any advice on how businesses can effectively reskill their employees for this new digital first world?
I think, Bernard, one of the examples you just mentioned is check-in counters in retail, large retail outlets. People are stuck in those jobs all their life. They just keep doing repetitively the same thing, and because they repetitively do the same thing, the hourly rates don't go up for them. They potentially end up with a $15 to $20 hourly rate all their life. um, Teller of a bank, you do the same thing again and again, and you're stuck on that job. I think the key in the economy we are all living in, it's a very interesting paradox. On one side, you have just taking the example of the US, you have 10.5 million jobs open in the January jobs report. You have 8 billion people available. There is a gap. 4 million people a month are leaving their jobs. And you almost wonder, the total US population in productive jobs is 150 to 160 million people. The average labor participation is 62%. What I mean by 62% is number of people who are eligible for doing a job, who show up in the workplace and do a job, and the rest are eligible. They are on an eligible age, but they don't want to do a job, either because they have something else to do, they can't do a full-time job. So we are living in this paradox where 4 million people, which is one third of the workforce in the US, is resigning in a year, literally one third, because you're almost going to lose 50 million people in a year if people are leaving. You have open positions, you have lesser number of people available, and you have labor participation, which is muted. It's only at 60 odd percent. It's a paradox of sorts. And the reason why this paradox is because people do not see hope going to a workplace, not because they just have to get for a living, but because they can live the American dream. The American dream is to actually create more prosperity for the next generation and the next generation. That whole template is completely broken. It's broken because jobs don't have upward social mobility. 50% of the Americans do not have a degree. And because they do not have a degree, they do not have access to good jobs. And because they don't have access to good jobs, they're stuck in these low potential jobs. The template, again, going back to the Industrial Revolution, was for the first 25 years, we go to educational institutions. And the next 50 years, we go to workplaces, drawing from that education we did. In fact, like supply chains I spoke about, which went from just in time to just in case, education will go from just in case to just in time. What I mean by that is in the last few decades, education, I'm sure both of us did this. We went to schools, we did formal education for the first part of our life, first third of our life. The next third of our life, we are actually going to go to workplaces, draw from that education all our life. That template made education the entry point or the bridge to get to good work. With digital technologies, the life of the skills has shortened. The life of the skills has shrunk. So what that really means is what you do in your first 25 years is kind of obsolete by the time you start doing your jobs.
Mm.
So I think the future of work is going to be education and work intertwined at workplaces. You build lifelong learners at in your K-12 schools, and then you intertwine education and work in repetitive templates all your life, which essentially means you draw education resources all your life at work and do a job, which then means that no longer education is the bridge to work, which is a good thing if I believe, because education has become a barrier. $150,000 is an undergrad degree in the US. How many people can afford it?
Mhm.
Which means that barrier is broken with digital technologies because skills are short-lived, and skills are short-lived. So employers have the uphill task of building the digital infrastructure, the learning infrastructure in partnership with academic institutions, and weave it into the workplaces so that access to jobs is not restricted. So I think we will end up, if we wire this template well, we will end up at a point where we could create much better access to jobs, and we could create an opportunity for people who didn't have access to high potential jobs. We could create the bridges between low potential to high potential jobs using this digital infrastructure. In fact, one of the smart things of the industrial revolution was apprenticeship, which really was in vogue in Europe, actually, in some ways. And we are starting to see digital apprenticeships in jobs. So companies like Infosys now can hire somebody from the teller of a bank or from the retail check-in counter you mentioned, and bring them, radically reskill them, bring them into the workforce, radically reskill them, and take them to new age jobs like cybersecurity or data scientist kind of jobs. We just hire based on potential and help out the reskilling infrastructure to get there. So it's a very exciting transition the world is going to go through, where education and work is intertwined. There are bridges built from low potential to high potential jobs, and you create upward social mobility in jobs, and therefore you have this unique opportunity to bridge the digital divide, if I may, which has happened because education really created the divide.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the books I'm working on at the moment is one on future skills, and this ability to continuously learn will be a core skill for anyone. And at the same time, you said companies have a responsibility. For me, individuals also have a responsibility. And now we don't need to spend $150,000 on a degree course. We can learn many relevant skills for free in online learning platforms. So for me, the importance of a degree in the future will probably become less important, and we will transition to an economy where this continuous skill development will become increasingly important. And I completely agree that in businesses they have a responsibility to provide people with ongoing education alongside their career. Anything else that you would add that workers are looking for when they are searching for jobs nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. There is, I would say, the health crisis which has happened has kind of triggered four or five things. Um, there is heightened levels of burnout. There is a backlog of resignations because as the economy started to improve, people are enacting their plans. I would say the important piece is there is a pandemic epiphany which has happened. People have started to believe, I don't, the flexibility I need at work is not about when I work and where I work. The flexibility is about why I go to work. I think that's an important switch. Why I go to work is an important switch. And that switch, um, the great resignation era we're all talking about isn't a mad rush away from the office. It's a culmination of a long march to freedom. Flexibility is more about choosing the place where you work, which gives you the freedom to decide your purpose, the people, the priorities. Um, and the debate has really shifted. The debate has shifted from when and where to why I need to go to work. Um, and I think that's an important shift. Um, the hybrid paradox I spoke about, 70% of the people are now saying I want flexibility. And remember, flexibility is different to what it was in the past. It's about why I need to go to work, not as much about just when and where I need to go to work. 70% of the people are actually saying they need human connections. It's very interesting. 70% are saying they need human connections. 70% are saying they need flexibility. This is a LinkedIn survey which was conducted. And enterprises can see it as the great resignation, or they can see it as the great opportunity or the great reset, because more people are available for jobs. So you can almost, if you have the right value proposition, the employee value proposition, which kind of ticks the boxes I just spoke about, you could actually attract more people than what you could before, because more number of people are looking out for that purposeful jobs which can match their priorities, which can allow them, which can give them the freedom to work with the people they believe they have to work with. So I think it's a interesting spot where the world is in. Bernard, I had this one other very interesting hypothesis, which I believe is going to pan out in the next few years. We are going to see, as physical workplaces and work are going to get decoupled, um, because we have started to we've started to see a tectonic shift in virtualization of work. Thanks to the pandemic, it's kind of tested the waters, stretched the boundaries. Um, we're going to see a decentralization of living. You know, in a post-pandemic era, I'm absolutely sure we are never going to go back to physical work all our life or 5 days a week. We will go into a hybrid model. We'll not stay remote. We have to draw social capital from workplaces. So we will go into a hybrid model. As we go into a hybrid model, why should work be orchestrated in rich urban settings? It can be orchestrated in rural America, in rural United Kingdom. Take work to where the people are. Don't bring people to where the work is. And that's going to happen. There is going to be a decentralization of living, as I call it. Cities and countries will compete for these remote workers, and it will lead to redistribution of where people live and work. Um, I think this is going to be real. Millions of people will now live anywhere, and remote work will be untethered um, from the physical workplaces. Um, and this is a very interesting switch, because this will lead to diversity and inclusivity in workplaces. Why? Because if you are in rural America, you have access to that work. If you are a caregiver, you have adult care or child care to be done. You want to work for 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day. Because work is going to be modular, it will be accessible to you. Um, so gig work will become more real. Workplaces will have this natural force of diversity and inclusivity, because you're going to take away workplace biases out, the physical workplace biases out, and literally work will be in your neighborhood rather than you traveling to rich urban settings. So it's a phenomenal thing, if we can reset ourselves to this new reality. I'm already seeing this with our clients. My New York-based clients, I live in New York. My New York-based clients have told me, I don't care where the people are, just get it done. So I'm able to do this in Rhode Island. I'm able to do this in the Midwest. I can move work to places where there is talent pool available, the potential talent pool available, and suddenly the art of the possibilities of what we could do has changed. And imagine now with machines coming into picture, humans being part time and full time, just the possibilities are immense.
Very good. So obviously we'll move to a more distributed workforce. What else will the digital first workforces or workplaces look like in your view in the future?
So we spoke about humans plus machines. I think, I call it humans plus machines plus gig. Humans being full time, gig being part time. Machines doing the problem solving, humans doing the problem finding, then bringing the next big purposeful problem to the workplace. I think there will be decentralization of work, moving away from urban settings to rural settings. Um, Work will actually move between countries. In fact, we saw a model of hub and spoke in the past where outsourcing happened all the way to India, but we will now see pools of talent all over the world. There are a million software professionals in Eastern Europe. There are a million software professionals in countries like Colombia, Costa Rica, Peru, in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, in countries like Romania, Ukraine, and Bulgaria, and countries like that, which have a lot of talent. I would actually see non-STEM talent showing up in workplaces. I would see, because if problem solving is done by machines, humans have to bring cognitive diversity to workplaces, which means you would find more liberal arts professionals in workplaces, you would find sociologists and anthropologists, psychologists in workplaces. Remember, these professions only do enabling jobs in enterprises today. They would become more mainstream. Workplaces will become much more empathetic because we spoke about it, how the purpose of doing work is no longer about when and where I do work, but it's also about why I want to go, why I go to a workplace. So with these options around us, and the other important shift I would say is, today the great resignation era which is happening is because of industries like hospitality, hotels, retail, where healthcare, where workers are just walking away because they don't see upward social mobility. So we're going to see more upward social mobility in workplaces. I hope so. We will see upward social mobility in workplaces, which means, enterprises have to build this digital infrastructure. In fact, some of the people we interviewed and hired with a background in, say, hospitality or healthcare, or a check-in counter of a retail outlet, they basically said, look, um, if our employers gave us a path of saying this is how you could become a supervisor or this is how you could become a manager, we would have stuck to those jobs. We showed up at your place because you gave us access to this learning infrastructure, and you hired on potential. You didn't hire on a degree or hire on skills, and you invested on the digital learning infrastructure so that we could create this upward mobility. So these are the things I would see on a workplace, and it will get decoupled from a physical workplace. It's happened for decades now, where we showed up on a physical workplace. It will get decoupled from it.
Great. So at Infosys, you are focusing on reskilling, you're recruiting on potential. What are other things that you do to help to reskill your own employees and make sure your own organization is attractive to future employees?
So Bernard, if you've heard about Infosys, when we were born 40 years ago, back in India, uh, we actually created talent by building finishing school infrastructure. So we have the largest corporate training university in the world, back in India. And we did that for almost 35 years. As the embrace of digital technologies happened, we realized the people we hire has to be also in closer proximity to where our clients are. And then we started to build a localization model where we hired in the markets where we partnered with our clients. We hired in the US. We gave a commitment of 25,000 jobs in 2017. In the UK, we gave a commitment of 1,000 jobs. So we went around the world and we created these talent transformation initiatives.
Mm.
We partnered with academic institutions and we built these pathways from undergrad schools. So we believe that hiring from the market is not good enough. What's the point in hiring from the market when there is a supply crunch? You're not going to find enough talent. So we build training infrastructure, learning infrastructure with academic institutions. So we hire from undergrad schools. We do a 12-week training, and then we transition them to a job of the future. In that process, we realized that as we enter the digital era, a degree is not necessary. So we went to community colleges, which are two-year associate degree colleges in the US, and we hired from community colleges.
Mm.
And most people in community colleges do jobs and do part-time studies. Then we created a template called the digital apprenticeship template, where you could come from a community college into Infosys and get 60 credits as you work with us. We call it the learn, earn, and work template. And in this template, you get credits from a university, which is partnered with us, through the immersive learning you do at your job. And we call it the digital apprenticeship. That worked. That was a blockbuster. Then we
Mm.
said, why not? Why not actually check people without a degree? So we started to assess people on potential. It's a science. It's not an evolved science. You take a bet. Imagine hiring somebody from a teller of a bank on the potential that they could become a cybersecurity consultant. It's a big bet. It's a leap, I would say. It's a radical reskilling template. But the talent pool is unlimited there. There are hundreds and thousands of people who are available, who are stuck on these low potential jobs, which we hire on potential. Then we evaluate them on which pathways they fit the bill. Then we land them on a backbone job, as I call it. The backbone job is, say, for example, data operations or security operations. And as they get the 60 credits as they work with us, we transition them from the backbone job to a core job. So you could start your career through this radical reskilling as a data operations guy or a security operations guy. And as you immersively learn on the job, you could become a cybersecurity consultant, or you could actually become a data scientist. So that whole template, we have evolved it in the last 1 or 2 years. And we're so super excited that it's working. It is, it's not just the right thing to do. It's not just the impact it makes on the societies and the communities we live in, but it's an economically viable template in an industry where the supply is acutely in shortage. So we think this is going to be an exciting template we're going to replicate all over the world, and create this talent pool. Look at what Infosys does. We hire 40 to 50,000 people in a quarter, in 1 quarter. We hire literally 40 to 50,000 people in 1 quarter all over the world. Where would we get these people from? These are tech people, tech and digital skills, which are in acute shortage. So you build the feeder from untraditional pools, alternate pools, and make them economically scalable and viable for our business. That's what we are in the business of. And we are constantly innovating that template and creating that feeder. And that's why we are one of the fastest growing tech and digital services companies in the world.
Yeah, this is really wonderful to hear, and I think a trend that I've seen for a long time, and it's nice to see this actually being put into practice. The shift towards recruiting on talent, giving humans an opportunity to excel and add real value. It's wonderful without the need for a degree necessarily. So how does this shift towards digitizing the US workforce impact the broader future of technology?
So, Bernard, I'm absolutely convinced that every industry is going to be a tech industry. Every company is going to be a tech company. Yesterday evening, I was actually talking to a CXO of a car company in Europe. It's fascinating what he said. He basically said, um, "We are not in the internal combustion business anymore. We are a electric and software company. By 2035, we want all our cars to be electric, and we want all our cars to be software enabled. We are a proprietary software company." That's exactly what he said yesterday. And I was just so amazed by thinking, wow, a car company is saying they're a software company. Uh, that's true for every industry now.
Mm.
Uh, in the pandemic, what has happened is anybody who had a trusted brand and a distribution network transitioned between industries. Retailers are now saying they want to be in healthcare. Healthcare companies are now saying they want to be in retail. Retailers are now saying they want to be in financial services. Why? Because the lines between these industries have blurred. If you have a
Mm.
trusted brand, you have a consumer base, you have a distribution network, you can actually straddle between any industry, because in some ways the lines are blurred because of the fact that everything is embedded in software. We thought digitally native companies were doing this for a living, but we now see large enterprises doing it. So I think technology will become very pervasive, and it will be embedded into everything you buy and everything you you service. Equally, uh, software will become very low code.
Mm.
What I mean by that is today you have a small number of developers uh, developing software, and a large number of consumers actually using the software. You're going to find software producers and software consumers, those lines are going to blur, because low code software is going to take over. And as low code software takes over, the distribution of software is going to be much more universal, much more seamless. And as that happens, every employee is going to be a producer and a consumer of software.
Mm.
And that low code software is no longer the future, it's real, it's happening now. And it's great because it will allow it will allow individuals to be more productive. um, and as that happens, I believe the products and services we actually use in our daily lives will become much more productive, will
Mm.
become much more efficient. So we are entering into an era of low code software. For the first time, it's fascinating. For the first time in the history of the world, the number of developers hired by the non-tech industry is higher than the number of developers hired by the tech industry in FY21. In the calendar year 21, technology professionals hired by the non-tech industry is higher than the technology professionals hired by the tech industry, because the car companies are hiring more people more technology people than the software companies. The healthcare companies are hiring more technology people than the software companies. So really, it's blurred. But the productive use of technology, the productive use of software in every industry is going to be a human endeavor, which we are all looking forward to.
Yeah, and I agree. And I completely agree with everything you've just said. And I believe that, especially when you talk about software, AI and machine learning is one kind of software. And for me, moving to this no code and low code environment will actually democratize those technologies. And for me, the most exciting area that we or era that we can enter is when anyone in the world can simply create AIs to make themselves and their organizations more effective and more efficient and deliver more value to customers. So I'm also very excited about all of this. Maybe we can finish off by taking a look into the future and maybe explore some of your key hopes or predictions going forward.
So I think we covered quite a bit in the. I will just summarize very quickly. I think there's going to be decentralization of living, taking work where the people are. It's a good thing. It will hopefully contribute to the carbon footprint positively. Enterprises are going to become much more empathetic and much more purposeful. There's going to be more value for stakeholder capitalism, not just to shareholders, but the communities you live in, the employees, and the constituents you address. Enterprises are going to become the biggest platforms for societal change. And I'm really hopeful that this is the future we are all entering into. They become the biggest platforms for societal change. With all the democratization of work, decentralization of work getting decoupled from physical places, moving away to parts of the world where access of work was not available, work also becoming much more modular so that it could be done by part-time workers. I would actually believe workplaces will have a natural flair to be diverse and inclusive. So workplaces will become diverse and inclusive. There will be decentralization of living. Workplaces will hopefully become more empathetic and purposeful for the future. I'm very, very hopeful that we would also create upward social mobility in jobs so that we all get our next generations have better jobs than what we have, and actually build a tomorrow which is more prosperous than today. And ironically, the pandemic has become the kind of the catalyst for all this change. Bernard, you're on mute.
I am on mute. And yeah, it's a nice way to finish our conversation with the hope that actually the technology and to some extent the pandemic has been this catalyst for making our world a better place and creating more prosperity and better, more human jobs for the future. So thank you very much, Ravi, for your time today. This was fascinating. I could carry on talking to you now for days about all of this. Anyone who would like to rewatch any of these conversations, you can head to my YouTube channel where you can find hundreds of other conversations and videos like this. Thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you.